Good evening, my lovely things. Welcome back to the channel. For those of you who are new, I'm Kasara, the host of the Cavern of Secrets, bringing the strange, creepy, and random content because sometimes it's spur of the moment what I feel like talking about. I'll admit that. I hope you all are doing amazing and are ready for the weekend. Since the horror genre tends to use real criminal cases for inspiration, I've been curious which films have been inspired by true events and which ones haven't been. Because some movies don't say that they're based on true stories, and they actually are. And some movies make it seem like they're based on true stories when they're not. And I'm talking about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That movie honestly made me think that it was a true story. Same with the Blair Witch Project. I think that had everybody thinking it was real. Until, of course, we figured it out that it wasn't real. It was all fake. And I think that's what actually started the found footage phenomenon. So those especially make people think that it's real, more so than I believe any other horror movie. Anyways, so the Phantom Killer of Texas Arcana was the inspiration for the film The Town That Dreaded Sundown. I haven't found the original, so I don't know what the difference is between that and the remake, because I've only seen the remake. The details of the case are pretty graphic and may be triggering for some, so continue watching at your own transgressions. I'm going to try and keep this as brief as I possibly can for the murders. Because, well, I don't think you can get into too much details on YouTube without them flagging you. Wouldn't surprise me. Anyways, so on February 22nd, 1946, Jimmy Hollis, age 25, and his girlfriend Mary Jeanne Larry, age 19, went to a movie before heading to Lover's Lane, which is on the border between Arkansas and Texas. A bright flashlight beam interrupted the romantic moment, which blinded Jimmy. A male voice then ordered Jimmy to remove his clothes. The stranger then stomped and beat him so viciously Jimmy's skull cracked, placing him in a coma for days. Mary, on the other hand, tried to run away, but the stranger caught up to her and physically and sexually assaulted her. Both Jimmy and Mary survived the attack and were able to tell the police. However, Jimmy's and Mary's descriptions of the assailant, were different. Mary believed the individual was a dark-skinned man with a white sack over their head with holes cut out for the eyes and mouth. Jimmy, on the other hand, couldn't remember much of the stranger, although he believed the perpetrator was a young white male. A month later, another couple on Lover's Lane near Texarkana were attacked. Richard Griffin, who was 29 years old, and Polly Ann Moore, who was 17 years of age. The bodies of the young couple were discovered the next morning with fatal bullet wounds in the back of their heads. In April, another couple were murdered, this time high school sweethearts. Paul Martin, 16, and Betty Jo Booker, she was 15. Paul picked up Betty after a dance where she was playing the saxophone in a band. Paul's body was spotted the next morning with 4 bullet wounds. However, a search party found Betty, who had been shot in the head and heart. On May 3rd, a final couple was murdered, this time not on Lover's Lane. Instead, Virgil Starks, age 37, was reading the newspaper in his living room when 2 bullets crashed through the window and hit him in the head, killing him instantly. When Starks' wife, Katie, rushed to help him, she was shot with 2 bullets to the face. Surprisingly, she survived and was able to cross the highway to a neighbor's home. By the time police had arrived, the killer was already long gone, which isn't really surprising, although I'm surprised at how brave she was to leave the house to get help. Just because he could have been outside, still waiting. And of course he had the guns, so he could have shot her and killed her before she even made it to her neighbor's home. So, very brave woman. This case was decades before the term serial killer was thought of, yet the FBI and Texas Rangers were all called onto the case. Hundreds of tips came in, and the police interviewed many Texan Arcana people that may have been prime suspects. Citizens were also taking desperate measures to protect themselves. People booby-trapped their doors with pans, vases, and flower pots filled with loose silverware or nails. Loaded shotguns in each room and blazing lights at all times of the day and night became the norm. People were buying guard dogs and guns. Stores ran out of blinds and window shades, all in attempts to protect themselves. On June 28th, 1946, police were tracking a stolen car and arrested Peggy Stevens Swinney, age 21. She was the new bride of a local troublemaker, Ewell Lee Swinney, age 29. The couple had just gotten married a few hours earlier and were honeymooning by indulging in their favorite hobby: stealing cars and taking long joyrides, sometimes thousands of miles long. Roughly 2 weeks after her arrest, police found the car thieving groom who had been in trouble with the law since childhood, and it seemed to be a break in the case. When the police arrested him, he asked an odd question as they drove him to the station house. Will they give me the chair? Stealing cars is not punishable by death even today, which caused suspicion that they might have actually caught the Phantom. Swinney's wife offered detectives incriminating tales and described one of the murders. However, she was legally barred from testifying against her husband, and the rest of the evidence was too weak for a conviction. Swinney did go to jail, however, and was behind bars for most of his life, until his passing, where he died of cancer in 1994. No actual killer was found for the crimes, though there were other candidates besides Swinney. A college student, H.B. Tennyson, who was 18. They confessed to some of the murders in a suicide note in November 1948. The case is still unsolved and probably will remain that way for a long time. Unfortunately, during the 40s, they didn't have the knowledge or the technology we have today with forensics, and by now most of the evidence is probably gone. Or they won't be able to match or go through a database to correlate the evidence or forensic evidence to the suspects of back then. Because, well, they didn't have databases back then. They didn't have computers to hold all that information. So, who do you think the Phantom was? I honestly think it was Swinney. Just because why would he think he was going to get the chair? Kind of suspicious, and the fact that Peggy offered information about the murders and incriminating details of things. I know she could have gotten the information about the murders from the newspaper, so it could have just been hearsay. But you never know. So do you think the police nabbed the right person with Swinney, I should say? Or was it the college student who committed suicide? Or maybe it was somebody else entirely. Could be anybody, honestly. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. And thank you so much for watching and sticking around to the end. For those of you who have seen the original, The Town That Dreaded Sundown, what are your thoughts on the film versus the actual case? Do you think it was pretty accurate, or did they throw in a lot of extra details to kind of make it more interesting or more gruesome, since a lot of horror movies do that? I hope you all have a great weekend. I shouldn't say later. Next week, I will be discussing the case that inspired Jennifer's body, which I had no idea there was a real case behind the film because they never said it. And that's why I'm looking into horror movies and seeing if any of them are based on true stories. If you don't want to miss the upcoming content, click the bell icon to be the first ones notified of the new updates. Show your support of the channel and myself by clicking the like and subscribe buttons, because it's a huge help and means a lot to me. I greatly appreciate those of you who already have. It means a lot. Take care until next time, and I hope you all have a great weekend and start of your next week. Bye, everyone.